The mysterious arrival. It was a dark, quiet night on an unknown planet. The sky was full of stars, but there was no moon to light the way. The wind howled through the empty landscape, sweeping sand and dust across the barren ground. The planet was cold, and the air smelled strange, almost like a mixture of metal and something unknown. The land stretched endlessly in all directions, with no signs of life. On this lonely planet, two alien twins were struggling to survive. They had crash-landed here after their spaceship was destroyed in an attack. The twins, who looked almost identical except for their shimmering green skin and large expressive eyes, were confused and frightened. Their ship was no longer in one piece, and the little food and supplies they had were gone. They had no choice but to search for food and shelter, but with no idea where to start. The two of them felt helpless. "Do you think we will find anything here?" asked the younger twin, her voice shaky. "I don't know," replied her brother, "but we have to try. We can't stay here much longer." The twins moved cautiously through the rocky terrain, their steps slow and uncertain. They were exhausted from the crash, and the strange planet's cold made their bodies ache. Their hearts were heavy, filled with worry about their survival. But deep down, they knew they had to keep going. If they gave up now, they might never find a way off this planet. As they walked, the sound of their footsteps was the only noise they could hear. The wind was too strong for any other sounds to break through. The twins kept their eyes open for any signs of life or anything that could help them. But the more they searched, the more they realized that this planet seemed completely empty. "Do you think anyone will find us?" the younger twin asked, her voice full of fear. "I don't know," her brother answered. "But we can't wait for help. We have to take action." They walked on for hours, growing more tired with each step. Just as they were about to lose hope, something caught their attention. In the distance, a strange light flickered in the darkness. It wasn't like any light they had seen before. It was bright, but not blinding. It moved slowly, like it was floating above the ground. The twins exchanged a look. Could it be something, or someone, that could help them? The younger twin felt a rush of hope. "Maybe it's a ship. Maybe someone is out there," she said, her voice filled with excitement. Her brother wasn't so sure. "We don't know what that light is. It could be dangerous." But the younger twin couldn't wait. She started running toward the light, and her brother followed, unsure of what to expect, but not willing to let her go alone. As they got closer, the light grew brighter, and they could make out a shadowy figure standing beneath it. The figure was tall, and its shape looked strange to the twins. It didn't seem like anything they had ever seen before. They stopped just a few meters away, watching the figure carefully. The light flickered one more time before the figure turned to face them. For a moment, everything was still. The wind stopped, the air grew heavy, and the twins held their breath. The figure was human. The twins had never seen a human before, but they had heard stories. Humans were known to be strange, unpredictable creatures. Some said they were brave, while others believed they were ruthless. The twins didn't know what to think, but the sight of a human here, in this strange place, made them nervous. The human soldier stood still, looking at the twins with curiosity, but no fear. He didn't seem scared of them, even though they were completely different from him. His eyes locked with theirs, and for a moment, everything felt frozen. "Who are you?" asked the younger twin in a quiet voice, unsure of how to speak to this strange creature. The human didn't answer at first. He seemed to be studying them, just as they were studying him. The twins could see the weariness in his face, as if he had been traveling for a long time. He was dressed in a strange uniform, but the material looked tough, almost like armor. He carried a weapon at his side, though it wasn't raised or pointed at them. The twins weren't sure what it meant. Then, to their surprise, the human spoke. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said, his voice calm and steady. "I was sent to find you." The twins froze. "Sent to find us?" the brother repeated, confused. "Why?" The soldier lowered his weapon and took a step closer. "You're not alone here. There are others looking for you. I'm here to help." The twins exchanged a look, their fear growing stronger. Could they trust this human? What did he want with them? As the soldier took another step forward, he reached into his bag and pulled out something that made the twins' eyes widen in surprise. Food. It was a simple meal, wrapped in a strange material, but it was food. The twins hadn't eaten in days, and the smell of it made their stomachs growl with hunger. "I know you're hungry," the soldier said gently, holding out the meal. "It's not much, but it will help." The twins looked at the food, then at each other. Was this a trap? They had been on the run for so long, never knowing who or what they could trust. But they were starving, and the human's offer seemed genuine. After a long pause, the brother stepped forward and took the meal. His hand shook slightly, not from fear, but from hunger. They hadn't eaten in so long that it felt strange to have food again. As the twins ate, the soldier stood quietly, watching them. There was something different about him, something that made the twins feel both cautious and curious. Who was he? Why was he here? And what would happen next? The twins didn't know the answers to these questions, but one thing was certain. Their journey on this strange planet had just begun. The first encounter. The twins had barely finished the last bite of food when the human soldier spoke again, breaking the silence that had settled around them. His voice was calm, steady, but there was something strange about it that made the twins feel uneasy. It wasn't just the words he said, it was the way he said them, as though he knew more than he was letting on. "You can rest here for now, but this planet isn't safe," he said. "We need to keep moving." The twins exchanged another look, unsure of whether to trust the human or to keep their distance. They were still suspicious, still uncertain about this stranger who had appeared out of nowhere. But at the same time, they felt the weight of their exhaustion, the gnawing hunger in their stomachs, and the fear of the unknown. They had no choice but to listen. "Who are you?" the younger twin finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The human soldier hesitated for a moment. His eyes, which had initially looked so confident, seemed to darken as if he was searching for the right words. "My name is Elias," he said after a long pause. "I'm not from this planet. I'm here on a mission to protect you." The twins froze. Protect them? What did he mean by that? Why would he be sent to protect two alien strangers like them? "What do you mean?" the older twin asked, his voice cautious. "Why would you want to protect us? We've never met you before. How do we even know you're telling the truth?" Elias looked down for a moment, his face softening with what seemed like concern. "I understand your doubts, but you're not the only ones out here. There are others, dangerous people, who will stop at nothing to find you. I was sent to keep you safe." The twins glanced at each other. Their minds raced. The world around them seemed to spin as Elias' words sank in. People were looking for them. Who could possibly want to find them? And why? It didn't make sense. "We don't even know you," the younger twin said, her voice shaking with uncertainty. "How do we know we can trust you?" Elias sighed deeply, as if he had anticipated this reaction. "I get it. I really do. But the truth is, I was sent here to help you because you have something important. Something that could change everything. But I need you to trust me, or we won't survive." The twins looked at each other, weighing their options. Their instinct told them to run, to find shelter in the wilderness and escape. But the hunger gnawing at their stomachs reminded them how vulnerable they were. If they ran, they might find themselves even more alone, more exposed, and more desperate. The older twin turned back to Elias, his expression more serious now. "What do you mean? We have something important. What are you talking about?" Elias seemed to hesitate again, like he was debating whether to share more information. He glanced over his shoulder, as if checking to see if anyone was watching. "I can't explain everything just yet, but trust me when I say that there are others out there. Other beings who would stop at nothing to get their hands on you. You have something inside of you that they want. The twins' eyes widened. The younger twin couldn't help herself. What do you mean? What's inside of us? Elias looked at them for a long moment, his gaze serious. I can't say yet, but I can promise you this. If we don't leave now, you might never have the chance to find out. And you might not survive. The wind began to pick up again, swirling the sand around them. The silence that had fallen between them felt thick with tension. The twins looked at each other once more, and it was clear they were both terrified. But they were also beginning to understand the gravity of their situation. They had no choice but to follow Elias. All right, the older twin said at last. We'll trust you, for now, but we need to know more. What's going on? Why are we being hunted? Elias nodded, his face grim. I wish I could give you all the answers right now, but we don't have time. I promise I'll explain as much as I can when it's safe. For now, we need to get to a place where we can hide. The twins felt a mix of fear and curiosity. They had no idea what was coming, but they knew one thing for sure. They couldn't stay here. Not with the possibility of danger lurking around every corner. Elias led the way, moving quickly and silently through the rugged terrain. The twins followed closely behind, their eyes scanning the dark, empty land around them. Every sound, every shift in the air, seemed amplified. The wind howled, the ground shifted beneath their feet, and the twins couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Where are we going? The younger twin asked, her voice barely above a whisper. We're heading to a safe house, Elias said. It's not far from here, but we need to move quickly. Stay close, and don't make a sound. The twins did as he asked, but their minds were racing. Safe house. What was he talking about? What kind of place could be safe from the people, or beings, that were after them? As they moved through the rocky terrain, the wind began to pick up, blowing dust and debris into their faces. It was harder to see, and the darkness seemed to press in on them from all sides. But Elias remained calm and steady, leading the way through the night. The twins couldn't help but admire how sure of himself he seemed. It was as if he knew exactly what he was doing. They walked for what felt like hours, the air growing colder and the landscape more desolate. The twins were exhausted, their feet sore from the long journey, but they couldn't stop now. They had to keep moving. Finally, they reached the edge of a small canyon. Elias paused and turned to face them. We're almost there, he said. Stay close, and don't speak unless I tell you to. The twins nodded, their hearts pounding in their chests. They had no idea what lay ahead, but they knew one thing for sure. They couldn't turn back now. Unexpected friendship. As the wind howled around them, the twins huddled close to Elias, following him through the narrow path carved into the rocky terrain. The once wide-open plains had turned into jagged cliffs and deep ravines. The terrain was treacherous, but Elias moved with confidence, as though he had traversed this very path 100 times before. The twins, however, were still on edge, eyes darting around at every creak of the wind and every rustle in the distance. They knew they weren't alone. Danger could be lurking just beyond the shadows. The younger twin, her mind racing with questions, finally broke the silence. Elias, she began, her voice trembling despite her best effort to keep it steady. You said we have something inside us. Something that others want. What is it? What do they want from us? Elias slowed his pace, glancing back over his shoulder at the twins. His eyes were dark and unreadable, but there was an underlying sadness in his expression. He opened his mouth to speak, but then closed it again. The weight of his knowledge seemed to press down on him, and the tension in the air thickened. I know you're scared, he said quietly, but I can't explain everything just yet. If I tell you too much now, we could all be in even more danger. All you need to know is that the people I'm protecting you from, they're ruthless. They'll stop at nothing to get what they want, and that something inside of you, it's something that could change everything. It's something they can't afford to lose. The twins exchanged a confused look. They didn't understand what Elias was talking about. Something inside them. But they didn't feel any different from any other beings. They were just regular aliens who happened to be stuck on a hostile planet, far from their home. Yet, Elias' words sent a cold shiver down their spines. Something was happening, something bigger than they realized, and they had no choice but to trust this stranger. So, what now? The older twin asked, his voice quieter than before. What's the plan? Elias didn't answer immediately. He led them through the jagged path, his eyes scanning the landscape with an alertness that the twins couldn't ignore. His every movement seemed calculated, like a soldier who had been in countless life-or-death situations. Eventually, they reached a small cave nestled at the base of a rocky cliff. Elias signaled for them to stop. "We'll rest here for a while," he said, his voice low. "It's safe for now." The twins were relieved, but still full of questions. The cave was small, just big enough for them to sit and stretch their legs. Elias pulled out a few more supplies from his bag. Water, a few energy bars, and some blankets. He didn't offer much in terms of food, but it was enough to keep them going. The twins gratefully accepted what they were given, but their thoughts were far from the meal in front of them. They couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. As they ate, Elias sat across from them, his gaze distant. For a moment, he didn't speak, and the silence between them seemed heavy, as if the weight of unspoken words hung in the air. The twins sat quietly, trying to make sense of everything, but no answers came. They were just as confused as they had been when they first saw Elias. They had no idea why he was helping them, and they were still uncertain if they could trust him. But despite everything, a small part of them, something deep inside, told them that they had no choice but to trust him for now. Finally, the younger twin spoke again. "You keep saying we need to trust you," she said, her voice soft but firm. "But why should we? You're a human. We don't know anything about you." Elias looked up at her then, his eyes meeting hers with a calm that was both reassuring and unsettling. He didn't respond right away, and the tension between them grew. "I get it," he said, his voice steady. "I'm not asking you to trust me just because I say so, but I am asking for your trust because I'm the only one who can keep you safe right now. Those people who are hunting you, there's no one else who can protect you like I can. And as for who I am, well, let's just say that I'm not the soldier you think I am." The twins stared at him, waiting for him to explain further, but Elias remained silent. He seemed to be battling with something deep inside that kept him from sharing more. The air in the cave felt colder suddenly, as if his words had left a chill that they couldn't escape. For a moment, there was only the sound of their breathing and the distant howling of the wind outside. The older twin finally spoke, his voice less hostile, more curious. "What do you mean you're not the soldier we think you are?" Elias paused before answering, as though trying to find the right words. "I wasn't always a soldier," he said quietly. "Before all of this, I was someone else. I wasn't sent here just to protect you. I came here for a reason, a personal reason. But that's not important right now. What matters is that I'm here to help you, and you need to believe that." The twins remained silent, not sure how to respond. They didn't know if they could believe him, but they could tell that Elias wasn't lying. There was something genuine about him, something that made them believe he wanted to protect them. They had been through so much already, and if Elias was their only hope, they had to take it. The younger twin looked at her brother, and for the first time since their crash, she saw a flicker of hope in his eyes. Maybe Elias wasn't just a stranger. Maybe he was someone who could help them find their way out of this nightmare. "I don't know everything," Elias continued, his voice softer now. "But I do know this. You two have something inside you that can change the fate of the galaxy. If we don't get you to safety, that chance will be lost forever." The twins looked at each other, unsure of what to think. The weight of his words settled heavily on their shoulders. They had never imagined that something as small as them, Two alien twins could have the power to change the galaxy. But here they were, with their lives in the hands of a human soldier who was risking everything to protect them. Elias stood up then, his face hardening as he scanned the entrance to the cave. "We need to keep moving," he said. "We can't stay here for long. We'll leave first thing in the morning." The twins nodded, the uncertainty still hanging between them. But for the first time since their ship had crashed, they felt like they weren't alone. Maybe, just maybe, this human soldier wasn't so different from them. Perhaps he, too, was just looking for hope in a world that had turned its back on him. The soldier's secret. The night passed slowly in the small cave. Elias, despite his earlier words of caution, seemed relaxed. He kept watch for a while, pacing near the entrance, then returned to his spot by the fire, keeping his eyes on the twins. The fire crackled, casting flickering shadows on the rocky walls of their temporary shelter. The twins, however, found it hard to sleep, their minds still racing with the storm of thoughts and questions that had been building since they met Elias. What was he hiding? Why had he come for them? What was the secret he wasn't telling them? As the twins lay close to each other, wrapped in blankets they had been given, the weight of the situation pressed down on them. Despite the warmth of the fire, they felt a deep chill in the air, something unsettling, a feeling they couldn't quite place. The morning light finally crept into the cave, casting pale rays across the ground, waking the twins from their uneasy sleep. They both sat up, eyes still heavy, but the urgency of the situation brought them back to reality. They had to move. Elias was already packed, his gear ready, and the fire had burned out. Without a word, he stood and motioned for them to follow. The twins, now used to his calm and purposeful movements, nodded and silently fell into step behind him. The path was rougher today, and the twins noticed Elias' pace quickened. They tried to keep up, but the harsh landscape of cliffs and rocks made it difficult. Every now and then, Elias would glance back, as if making sure they were still following him. His face was set, the usual warmth gone from his expression. It was a look that the twins hadn't seen before, a look that spoke of danger, of someone carrying a heavy burden. Finally, after hours of walking, they reached a cliffside overlooking a valley. From this vantage point, the twins could see nothing but endless desert, broken up by jagged mountains far in the distance. The sky overhead was gray, almost suffocating in its stillness. Elias stopped and gestured for the twins to come forward. "This is where we're going to stop for a bit," Elias said, his voice low. "We can't be too careful. We're getting close to where the enemy is patrolling." The twins, though confused, followed his lead, sitting on the rocky ground. The landscape stretched before them, and yet it felt like they were on the edge of a vast and empty world. "Elias," the older twin said cautiously, "there's something you're not telling us. You keep saying that we have something inside us that's important, but you won't explain what it is. Why? Why won't you tell us the truth?" Elias turned to face them, his posture stiff. He had been avoiding their questions ever since the night before, but now it seemed the twins weren't going to let him go without an answer. There was a long silence before Elias finally spoke. "You're right," he said slowly. "I haven't told you everything, and I know you deserve to know. But the truth, it's not simple. It's not something I can explain without putting us all in danger." The twins exchanged a confused look. This wasn't the answer they were expecting. The younger twin, her voice filled with frustration, pressed further. "How can we trust you if you're keeping things from us? We've already risked our lives to follow you. We deserve to know what's going on." Elias ran a hand through his hair, his expression tight with frustration. "You're right," he muttered. "You deserve the truth, but you're not ready for it. Not yet." The younger twin was about to say something else when the older twin placed a hand on her arm, stopping her. He knew their anger was justified, but he also understood that Elias was a soldier, and soldiers didn't always give the answers people wanted. They only acted. He turned his gaze back to Elias, his voice quieter now. Then, at least, tell us this. Why did they send you to protect us? Why you? What makes you different from everyone else? Elias stared at them for a long moment, his eyes darkening with some unknown emotion. For a second, it looked like he was going to speak, but he hesitated. Then, with a resigned sigh, he finally sat down next to them. He looked over the vast desert, as if searching for the right words. "I wasn't always a soldier," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Before all of this, I was part of something else, something far more secretive. I used to be with a group called the Guardians. Our job was to protect certain objects, certain people who held secrets that could shift the balance of power in the universe. You two were supposed to be one of those secrets." The twins listened intently, their minds racing as they tried to piece together his words. They had no idea what he meant by guardians, but the tone in his voice told them that it was important, far more important than anything they had ever imagined. Elias continued, his voice growing more distant. "I left the Guardians. I had my reasons that I can't explain now. But I had a mission, an order that I couldn't ignore. I had to find you too. Because whatever's inside of you, it's connected to something much larger than I ever anticipated. You were meant to carry something. Something that, if it falls into the wrong hands, could destroy everything." The younger twin felt a knot tighten in her stomach. What was Elias talking about? Something inside them. They didn't understand. They didn't feel any different from any other alien beings. How could they possibly be part of something so dangerous? "So, we're carrying something that could destroy everything?" the older twin asked, his voice steady, though his mind was in turmoil. Elias nodded, his expression grave. "Yes, but I can't tell you what it is. Not yet. All I can say is that you are both part of something that will shape the future of this galaxy. I didn't want to be a part of it, but the moment I found you, I realized I couldn't walk away. Not again." The twins were stunned into silence. They had come to this planet with nothing but fear and uncertainty, and now they were being told that they held the fate of the galaxy in their hands. How could that be true? How could they, two alien twins with no real power of their own, be so important? "I know this is a lot to take in," Elias said softly, as though reading their minds. "But there's no time to waste. We need to get moving. The ones who want what's inside you, they're coming, and we don't have much time before they find us." The weight of his words hung in the air, pressing down on the twins. They had been thrust into a world they didn't understand, facing dangers they had never imagined. And now, with Elias' secret revealed, they were left with more questions than answers. But one thing was clear. Elias wasn't just a soldier. He was a protector. And whether they liked it or not, they had no choice but to trust him if they were to survive what was coming next. Dangerous forces close in. The weight of Elias' words still hung in the air like a thick fog. The twins tried to process the shock of everything they had just learned. Something inside them. Something powerful enough to alter the course of the galaxy. It was almost impossible to fathom. They had come to this planet thinking they were just survivors of a crash. But now they were being told they were part of a much larger, far more dangerous story. They were important, whether they understood why or not. The moment of silence that followed was broken by a soft, rumbling sound in the distance. The twins turned to Elias, their hearts racing. They had grown used to the eerie quiet of the desert landscape, so the noise was out of place. Elias immediately stood, his sharp eyes scanning the horizon. His expression shifted from concern to focus, as if his senses had kicked into overdrive. "We're not alone," Elias muttered, more to himself than to the twins. "They're coming." The twins tensed, their bodies stiffening with sudden panic. Who was coming? Who could possibly be looking for them? Elias gestured quickly for them to move, his voice low and urgent. "Get up. Now. We have to move, and we have to move fast." Without asking questions, the twins followed Elias as he led them swiftly away from the cliffside. They climbed higher into the rocky hills, their feet slipping on the uneven terrain. But the fear of being caught spurred them on, pushing them faster and harder than they thought possible. The wind howled through the canyon, and every footstep seemed to echo in the vast emptiness. As they ran, Elias glanced back once more, his face tight with worry. "We're close. Too close. We need to find shelter before they get here." The twins, struggling to keep up with his pace, could feel the weight of the situation pressing on them. Their breath came in ragged gasps, their legs burning from the effort. But Elias didn't stop. He moved with a purpose, eyes constantly scanning the horizon as if searching for signs of the approaching danger. "What's happening, Elias?" the older twin called out, trying to catch his breath. "Who's coming after us?" Elias didn't answer immediately. They rounded a sharp bend in the path, and Elias finally slowed, his movements measured. The twins could see the strain on his face, the tension in his jaw. He was clearly trying to keep himself under control, but the pressure was mounting. "Those people I told you about," Elias said, his voice low and steady. "They're not just after you. They want whatever's inside you. They know what you're carrying, and they'll stop at nothing to get it." The younger twin shuddered. "But why us? We don't even know what's inside of us. How can they want something they don't even know about?" Elias turned, meeting her gaze with a seriousness that made her skin prickle. "They know. Trust me, they know. And they'll come after you, whether you're ready for it or not. You have to understand that we're not dealing with ordinary enemies. These people are ruthless. They'll do anything to get what they want." The ground beneath them began to slope downward, and Elias picked up the pace again. The twins followed, their anxiety growing with each passing second. Something was coming, and the deeper they moved into the rugged terrain, the more the twins could feel it. Something dangerous, something close. After what felt like hours of running, they reached a small cave nestled deep in the mountainside. It was hidden behind large boulders and thick brush, offering a bit of protection from the open desert. Elias hurried inside, urging the twins to follow him. They ducked into the cave, and Elias immediately started to work, pushing boulders into place to cover the entrance as much as possible. "Stay quiet," Elias whispered, his eyes flashing with warning. "They could be right behind us. Don't make a sound unless I tell you." The twins nodded, their hearts pounding in their chests. They crouched low to the ground, trying to steady their breath. They could hear the wind outside, howling like a wild animal, but the silence inside the cave was suffocating. Elias stood at the entrance, peering out through a small gap in the rocks, watching for any sign of movement. Minutes passed, then hours. The twins sat in the dark, feeling the weight of the uncertainty pressing down on them. Time seemed to stretch on, each second feeling like an eternity. They could hear nothing but the sound of their own breathing, and the occasional rustle of wind outside the cave. It wasn't until the younger twin couldn't take it anymore that she spoke. "Elias, what do we do now? How long do we stay here?" Elias didn't answer immediately. His eyes were focused on the distant horizon, and the twins could tell he was listening intently for something. Finally, he spoke, his voice tight with barely contained tension. "We wait, but not for long. They'll be searching for us, and they'll be relentless. We'll need to move again soon." The twins tried to settle in, but they were restless. The cave was cold and dark, and every creak of the rocks outside made their nerves spike. They weren't used to feeling so helpless. The future felt uncertain, and the danger that Elias had warned them about felt closer than ever before. Suddenly, Elias stiffened. His eyes widened, and his body went rigid, alert to every sound around him. "Get down," he hissed, dropping to the ground and pulling the twins down with him. "They're here." The twins felt their blood run cold as they crouched in the darkness. They could hear the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, and heavy, outside the cave. Whoever it was, they were close, very close. Elias looked at them with a hard expression. "Stay silent. Do not move until I say so." The twins barely breathed, their hearts thundering in their chests. Every inch of their bodies screamed for them to run, but they knew they couldn't. Not yet. They had no idea how many enemies were out there, or if Elias could protect them from whatever threat was closing in on them. The footsteps grew louder. Then, just as quickly, they stopped. A silence fell over the land, so thick it almost hurt to breathe. Elias looked up, his eyes narrowing. He held his breath, listening for any sign of movement. Then, through the eerie stillness, came a voice, low, almost taunting. "You can't hide forever, Elias. We know you're here." The voice sent a chill down the twins' spines. It was unmistakably foreign, harsh, and cold. The voice of someone who had no compassion, no mercy. "Let them come," Elias muttered under his breath, his jaw clenching. "Let's see how they handle what they've awakened." The twins exchanged worried glances. They were deep in the heart of this, and there was no turning back now. Danger was no longer a distant possibility. It was here, and they were about to face it head-on. The escape plan. The air in the cave was thick with tension as the twins huddled close to Elias, waiting for any sign of movement outside. The low, taunting voice from earlier had left them shaken, their minds racing with fear and uncertainty. They had never imagined that they would be hunted like this, dragged into a conflict they didn't fully understand. And now, with their only protector standing at the cave's entrance, keeping a watchful eye on the silent desert beyond, the reality of their situation was sinking in. "We can't stay here," Elias said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. He turned to the twins, his face hard with determination. "If they're searching for us, we're not safe here. We need to move." The twins exchanged a nervous glance. They had no idea where they could go or what to do. They were exhausted, terrified, and completely unprepared for what was coming next. "Where are we going?" the older twin asked, his voice laced with worry. "How can we escape if they're already so close?" Elias stepped back from the entrance, his eyes scanning the cave one last time before he turned to face them. "We have a few options, but none of them are easy. First, we need to move quickly, before they set up a full search perimeter. Second, we need to be smart, use the terrain to our advantage. And third, we need to find a place where we can lay low until I can get you to safety." The twins listened intently, their anxiety growing with every word Elias spoke. "And how are we supposed to do that?" the younger twin asked, her voice trembling. "We don't know anything about this planet. How can we hide if we don't even know where to go?" Elias sighed, his shoulders slumping slightly as he looked at them. "You're right. I wish we had more time to prepare, but the truth is we don't. I'm going to take you to a safe house, a place where we can regroup, catch our breath, and figure out our next move. It's not far from here, but we'll need to move fast." The twins weren't sure what to expect from this safe house Elias spoke of, but the desperation in his eyes told them that they had no other choice. They had to trust him, even if they didn't fully understand his plan. "Do you have a map?" the older twin asked, trying to calm his nerves. "We don't know anything about where we're going." Elias nodded. "I have a general idea. I've been here before. But there's no map that shows the real danger. Those who are hunting you aren't just looking for you on foot. They have advanced technology, drones, satellites. If we're not careful, we could be tracked the second we leave this cave." The twins felt their stomachs churn with fear. Advanced technology. Drones. The world they were in had become a terrifying place, far beyond anything they could have imagined. "But if we stay here," Elias continued, "they'll find us for sure. And that's not something I'm willing to risk." He motioned for them to stand. "We leave now. Stay close, stay quiet, and don't make any unnecessary noise. We can't afford to make ourselves an easy target." Elias quickly began pushing the boulders back in front of the cave entrance, covering their tracks as best as he could. The twins followed his lead, their hands shaking as they helped him move the heavy rocks. It felt surreal, like they were in a nightmare that they couldn't escape. When the entrance was covered, Elias led them out of the cave, moving silently through the jagged rocks that surrounded them. The twins kept their eyes on Elias, trusting him to guide them through the treacherous terrain. The wind had picked up again, carrying with it a cold chill that made their skin crawl. The planet felt more hostile than ever before. As they moved deeper into the wilderness, the twins couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. They kept their heads low, their hearts pounding in their chests, as Elias led them through the narrow paths, his footsteps light and careful. Every time the wind shifted or a rock shifted underfoot, the twins flinched, their nerves on edge. They were in a world that was unfamiliar, surrounded by danger at every turn. After what felt like hours of traveling through the harsh terrain, Elias finally stopped. He gestured for them to huddle close. "We're almost there," he whispered, his voice strained. "But we need to be careful. The last thing we want is to be detected." The twins didn't ask what he meant. They knew better than to question Elias right now. They just needed to focus on getting through the next few minutes, keeping their heads down and their movements slow. The tension was unbearable, and every second felt like it could be their last. Elias checked the horizon one last time, then motioned for them to follow him. They moved quickly but carefully, sticking close together as they climbed up a steep slope. The wind howled, making it hard to hear anything else. But the twins could sense it, the faint hum of machinery in the distance, the sound of something moving. They were close. Finally, they reached a small outcropping of rocks. Elias gestured for the twins to crouch low as he surveyed the area. "We're here," he whispered. "This is the safe house." The twins couldn't see much in the darkness, but they trusted Elias. They huddled close together as he approached a set of rocks, moving them aside with practiced ease. Behind them was a small, hidden entrance, barely visible unless you knew exactly where to look. Elias motioned for them to go inside. "We'll rest here for now. We're safe for the moment, but we need to stay alert. This place isn't invincible." The twins squeezed through the narrow entrance, entering a small, dimly lit space. The air inside was stale, but it was a relief to finally be off the open, exposed terrain. Elias closed the entrance behind them, sealing them inside the tiny refuge. As they sat down, Elias took a deep breath and let out a long sigh, his body tense with exhaustion. "We've made it for now," he said quietly. "But don't get comfortable. They'll be looking for us, and I can't keep you hidden here forever. We need to figure out where to go next." The twins exchanged nervous glances, their fear momentarily relieved by the temporary shelter. But they knew Elias was right. This wasn't over. They had just taken a small step toward safety, but there was so much more to come. Elias sat down beside them, his face serious. "You're not alone in this anymore," he said, his voice a little softer. "Whatever happens, I'll keep you safe." The twins nodded, their trust in Elias deepening despite the uncertainty of their situation. They didn't know what the future held, but they knew they had no choice but to keep moving forward. Together. A new hope. The cold, damp air inside the safe house was a strange comfort after the terrifying journey. Elias had managed to seal the entrance behind them securely, and the small, dimly lit cave was quiet, almost too quiet. The only sound was the soft rustling of their breathing, the crackling of the fire Elias had started, and the occasional distant rumble of the wind outside. But the fear was still there, hanging in the air, thick and unshakable. The twins couldn't let their guard down, not yet. Elias sat cross-legged near the fire, his gaze distant and thoughtful. He hadn't said much since they'd arrived at the safe house. His mind seemed to be racing, weighing the next steps in their escape plan. He knew they couldn't stay hidden for long. This place wasn't as safe as it seemed, and the enemies who were hunting the twins were relentless. But for now, they had a brief moment to breathe. The twins, exhausted both physically and mentally, sat nearby, their backs against the cool stone walls. They looked at Elias, unsure of what to say, but they had questions, so many questions. They needed answers. "What now?" the older twin finally asked, his voice quiet but filled with concern. "We can't keep running forever. We need to know what's going on. Why are we so important? What are we carrying inside us that's so dangerous?" Elias hesitated, his eyes flickering to the fire, as though seeking some sort of clarity in its flames. He had promised to tell them everything when the time was right. And that time had come. It was now or never. He could feel the weight of his decision bearing down on him. The truth was too heavy to keep locked inside any longer. "The truth is," Elias began, his voice softer now, almost as if he was trying to make sense of it himself. "The thing inside you both, it's not just a thing. It's a force, a power. It's something ancient, something the galaxy has been searching for, hoping for centuries. And you too." He looked at the twins, his eyes filled with a mix of awe and fear. "You're the key." The twins sat up straighter, trying to absorb his words. They weren't sure what he meant, but Elias' tone told them that what he was saying was incredibly important. The younger twin leaned forward, her mind racing. "But how are we the key?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We're just normal. We're just two survivors. How can we have something like that inside us?" Elias took a deep breath, his face tight with emotion. "I can't explain it all right now. There are forces at work far beyond anything we can understand. But you two were chosen. You're not just random travelers in this galaxy. You're a part of something much bigger, something that could change everything." He paused, looking at them both seriously. "The power you carry could either save or destroy worlds. That's why they're after you. The ones who are hunting you. They want that power for themselves. They'll stop at nothing to get it." The twins were speechless, their minds swirling with disbelief. They had gone from being stranded on an unknown planet, fighting for survival, to now being told they were the holders of some kind of cosmic power. It didn't seem real. It was too much to process. "But we don't even know what this power is," the older twin exclaimed. "How can we control something we don't understand?" Elias gave them a grim look. "That's the dangerous part. If it falls into the wrong hands, it could bring destruction on a scale unimaginable. But if it falls into the right hands, if you two can learn how to harness it, then you can change the fate of the galaxy. You can protect countless worlds from those who would use this power to control and destroy." The twins exchanged a long, uncertain glance. Their journey had been filled with more questions than answers, and now they were hearing about something even bigger than they had imagined. They weren't just survivors anymore. They were players in a galactic battle, whether they were ready or not. Elias stood up, his hands clasped in front of him as if making a decision. "I spent my life running from my past. But now, I know it's time to face it. And it's time for you two to step up too. You're not just the ones being hunted anymore. You're the ones who can fight back. You have the power. You can be the ones to turn the tide." The twins were silent, their minds spinning. It was a lot to take in, too much to process in a single moment. But as Elias spoke, something inside them began to shift. There was a fire in his words, a passion that they couldn't ignore. For the first time, they felt like there was a purpose to their survival. "We're with you," the older twin said, his voice steady. "We don't know what this power is or how to control it, but we'll learn. We have to." The younger twin nodded, her face filled with determination. "We've come this far. We're not stopping now." Elias smiled, a rare, genuine smile that softened his usually guarded expression. "Good. We'll face this together." The twins stood, standing side by side with Elias. They had no idea what the future held, but one thing was certain. Their journey wasn't over. It had only just begun. And this time, they weren't running from their fate. They were ready to fight for it. The wind outside the cave began to pick up, a sign that the storm wasn't over. But in the distance, the first rays of sunlight broke through the dark clouds, painting the sky with streaks of gold. For the first time since they had crash-landed on this unknown planet, The twins felt like there was hope, hope that they could fight back, that they could control the power inside them, and that they could protect the galaxy from the darkness that was closing in on them. Their journey had started with fear, with uncertainty, and with the unknown. But now, standing at the edge of a new beginning, they understood something crucial. They were no longer victims. They were the ones who held the power to change the future. And together, with Elias by their side, they would do whatever it took to protect the galaxy from those who sought to destroy it.